Joining me now is Venu Krishna, Barclays head of U.S. strategy, equity strategy specifically. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'd love to talk about some of your changes. Let's talk about downgrading value to negative and your worries there.
Yeah, I think, we have been consistently positive on growth. And growth, as you know, is really dominated by technology, where not just overall profitability, but the scale of the beats of earnings continues. Value, on the other hand, has exposure to segments which continue to face, broadly speaking, cost pressures, which include parts of especially staples, for an example. So I think the sector composition and the fact that eventually consumer sentiment sort of going down will sort of hurt the kind of sectors which are more in the value space is what makes us negative.
And what about momentum? Momentum to neutral. So you think there's value there, but maybe just sort of treading water for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, momentum is has worked at varying points in time, but our point at this point is we are kind of neutral on it. What we really like effectively is growth. And even on quality, we have been effectively neutral. So I think from a factor standpoint, I think what it shifts to is even when you talk about, for example, on the size, we are kind of neutral on large or small. We were positive of large for a long period of time, but then more recently we changed our stance because within large, our again focus is on big tech especially. On the other hand, small because of rate cuts, at least in the short term, have some sort of support to them. And on the other hand, more recently, their earnings have actually shown strength after a long period of weakness.
Definitely leans more bearish here. Some of your changes, obviously downgrading value to negative and then upgrading momentum and quality, but just to neutral and not beyond that. Can you sort of extrapolate a little bit about what you're worried about when it comes to the broader economy? Is it a slowdown or is it a possible recession?
No, I don't think recession is a very low probability, especially given the strength, one, in consumption, which remains robust even as the labor market has weakened. So I wouldn't characterize us as being negative, but I think the bigger scheme of things, what I would relate to is the single biggest issue in the market right now is the scale of AI spend and key questions about the returns on that spend, and also what could potentially cause it to sort of decelerate at some point in the future. So that's something on which we've done a lot of work. That is the single biggest discussion. And now, of course, the discussion also moved into if the scale of spending remains at this level, then operating cash flows of these hyperscalers is not going to be enough to sort of to do that. So it has to move into more the credit markets. And obviously that has implications if the size of the capex, for example, incremental capex, has increasingly gets dependent on the credit markets. So I think those are the bigger issues. But if I think about, there are two sort of downsides which can happen. If the AI trade stumbles, in other words, we start seeing a deceleration rather than an acceleration over the next 2 years, which we think highly unlikely. But the less likely, but a situation worth pondering is what if we have a macroeconomic slowdown because of the labor market or inflation going the wrong way, then that is likely potentially to be, that weakness will be accompanied by a pullback in AI capex as well. That combination, we feel, is going to have a fairly negative consequence. But that's not our base case, but that's something worth thinking about given the continued strength in the equity market. But overall, though, we still remain positive. I mean, I look at the current quarter with over 90% reported, these earnings are as strong as they come, tracking almost 50% growth on the earnings side and about 6.5% on sales. So there is a lot of good operating leverage in the system. So overall, we are optimistic, but it's also our job to keep an eye on what can go wrong.
Yeah.